Hey everybody, welcome back. For those of you new to the channel, I want to extend a welcome to you as well. And for those of you returning, good to see you again. Tonight's video, I'm going to do a little bit of a continuation on the last video I did, which is why our motivation fades after we learn the truth. I had a lot more thoughts to kind of go over with that, but I have to say, this is probably one of my better topics to discuss because it really hits home with me, and it seems like it resonates with all of you pretty well too. And one of the points that I really didn't quite get a chance to cover in the last video, but I'm going to kind of lead in with that, is really it's about the death of ego and the redefining of who we are and how we see ourselves. But when I say the death of ego, the interesting thing about it is it's not a complete and utter death of your ego. It's how you view yourself when it comes to, say, the dating market out there, or when it comes to, say, how we view ourselves in the eyes of other people as far as our ego goes. Because when you begin to learn the truth about not just our culture and dating and how hedonism has affected and destroyed everything and how those things tended to have a hold on us, you begin to get to a point where you just don't care. You just don't care about how everybody out there views you. You just don't care about whether or not people like you in a certain sense as to whether or not they want to approach you and date you based upon a certain facade that you put out. You stop caring about that sort of thing. And in that regard, in many ways, I would say that the ego then kind of dies. And we begin to discover that so many things that we were doing in our lives, like, trying to buy certain types of expensive vehicles all the way down to pursuing certain goals and hobbies, were really centered around a facade and a projection that we were putting out there just to try to impress other people. And it's interesting, we talking about how we buy things to impress people that don't care, because most of those people don't. They're not thinking about you. They're not thinking about you. They're not thinking about me. And you begin to realize, as these people are not thinking about you, you're not really concerned about them anymore. It's incredibly freeing. And I'm not saying you don't care about them in the sense of if they were in trouble or in pain or hurting on the street somewhere, you wouldn't go running out and help these people, or you wouldn't help somebody who is in a car accident or something. We're not talking about a general disregard for people's safety or them as human beings or something like that. We're talking about a general disregard for all the nonsense that's going on out there. The things that used to kind of keep you wrapped up mentally, trapped in that and worried constantly about how people thought of you. And in that regard, the death of ego is a huge, huge thing. It creates a depressive state. It creates a depressive state because now you feel like, well, who am I now if I'm not really that concerned about how women view me? If I'm not really that concerned about how people view me when I go out into public, who am I? But it is incredibly freeing in that sense, because then you begin to develop a sense of defining who you really are, what good boundaries really are. And you get to a point where you are only going to allow people in that are actually going to serve well in your life and you serve well in their lives. Now, that narrows down a lot of people, if we're going to be completely honest. In this day and age, there's a lot of people that are not going to fit that bill. And there will be periods of time where you will have solitude that you have to learn how to appreciate rather than dread, where you have to learn how to appreciate keeping yourself company, which is a great thing. I mean, that's incredibly amazing, because the thing, working on yourself and being able to face yourself, I'll tell you what, if you learn how to face yourself and be honestly self-reflective, there's not much out there that you can't accomplish if you can do that. And that kind of brings me to another point that I wanted to jump into is, it also gets rid of the relationship drive, the relationship thirst. Now, it doesn't mean that you wouldn't be open to it should the right relationship come along, but you're not searching for it. And you realize that this journey has nothing to do with getting a relationship or getting relationships with people. When I did that video talking about friendship and finding friends as adults, it's not about going way out of your way necessarily to do that. It's about framing your life in a way to where if there are people like that around that could potentially come into your life, that opens that door for them. It doesn't guarantee that it's going to happen. Same thing with a relationship. And when it comes to a relationship like something romantic or close to somebody, we all have to accept the reality that with the way our society and culture have gone, most people are entirely too damaged by it. They've been encouraged to become the most dishonest, most hedonistic, most self centered version of themselves to where they would never make a very good partner. So the likelihood that you will find that is incredibly, incredibly small, which is why you need to purge that relationship desire so that you are prepared to for it if it happens to come into your frame and happens to line up, but we're not looking for that. That is not the end all to be all. You need to find a way to have completion without that, because if you don't come to that conclusion and you're always looking for your completion in somebody else, then, well, you're doomed from the start. You're never going to make it, and you'll be constantly wanting and aching for that, not realizing that that was never what you actually needed at all. That sort of thing is something that is extra, that should it line up with the right person, and that's entirely dependent on who that person is. I mean, what type of approach they have. If they come into this understanding right from the outset that the hookup culture, that the hedonism, that everything that's going on is absolutely not the answer, and they've managed to face themselves and self-reflect about certain things, but these are huge hurdles that, like, right now we're sitting here talking about this. How many people do you think are wandering around out there thinking about this? Most of the people that are absolutely seeking attention online, running around chasing from one fad to the next, wearing the next thing, going out to the clubs and running around like there's no tomorrow, these are things that do not cross their minds. So overwhelmingly out there, people are not like this. If they're spending huge amounts of time on social media getting their mind influenced, or reading a lot of the crap and stuff that gets put in front of you, if you're just drifting around on some of these sites, they're not genuinely stopping for a minute, going into some form of solitude and self-reflecting on any of this, whether or not all those things are true, which parts are true, genuinely thinking about it from a realistic and honest standpoint. They're not doing that. And somebody has to be going down that road to even have the slightest chance of having a relationship with you. Now you get what I'm saying here. It's probably about 97, 98% chance you will not find that. Now, I'm not saying that to depress anybody. I'm saying that so that you have a realistic expectation and you are harsh on those boundaries and strict on it. Why? Because you don't need the wrong one coming in. You don't need the wrong relationship. You don't need the wrong relationships and friendships, even. You don't need those things. You need the right ones, or you need nothing. But you absolutely don't need the wrong ones. The amount of damage, catastrophe, and struggle that brings into your life, absolutely out of the question. You don't need those things. So it is far better to have a very good boundary and have very few people, if any, come in except the right ones, rather than have the wrong ones. That might be hard to convince certain people that have kind of conditioned themselves to live that way. But I can tell you, as somebody who has been through that, it is absolutely the right way to go. The best results come from that, and the highest level of personal peace will come from having that boundary of self-respect, just so that you do not allow essentially the poison to come into your life. And I guess really my final point here would be that this becomes a balance between survival mode, because you kind of switch into survival mode with all of this as you're trying to get through the depression part, as you're trying to get through and form a new life and see which people are going to come into that life. You switch over to this interesting sort of balance between your new life and whatever measure of happiness comes with that, and the survival mode that kind of kicked in as you kind of began to realize the truth, and you've stepped into this new way that you're doing things. you have this interesting sort of balance between survival mode and your new life. And some important things that you can do, things that I could give you as tips that I myself have done, it's entirely based on what you're taking in on a daily basis too. I mean, the types of music that you listen to, the types of podcasts that you listen to, the other things that you have going into your head. There are times where you have to take a break from something because it's just too depressing. They keep harping on and on and on about how, like, there are certain podcasts that I follow personally that talk a lot about everything that's going wrong with the economy, and there are certain times where I'll put that on pause a few days, won't really go back and take a look, just because I kind of need a breath of fresh air and need to build and do something positive in my life and not be so focused on everything that I already know is going wrong, because then you eventually get so focused on the things that you can't change and you stop focusing on things that you can change. And when you do focus on the things you can change, creative things that you can do, hobbies, your business, if you do have relationships, being able to focus on that, when you do focus on the things that you can actually change, it actually brings about a measure of positivity and balance, because the truth can be so bad that at a certain point you need it's not really escapism, but you need to be able to focus on the positive side of it, which is the stuff that we can do things about. And I get to that point too quite often, where it's kind of this balance between this survival mode and my life, because the survival mode part of me is looking at it going, oh yeah, I this guy, what he's saying over here is absolutely right. The economy is absolutely going down the crapper, nothing's going right. It doesn't matter who's in office, it seems like there's always problems on the horizon, and it seems like the elite just keep getting more money, the economy just keeps tanking even more, and we have to keep taking more steps towards the survival mode. And so I kind of drop into that and I realize, okay, here's the steps and stuff I need to take. But I get to a certain point where I'm absorbing so much of the negativity, or so much of the stuff where it talks about how bad relationships are today, that I forget, oh, yeah, that's right. I don't actually have to have a bad relationship. I don't even have to be thinking about it. If it's not the right person, then I shouldn't even be worried about it at all. In fact, if I'm doing the right things in my life, then the right person, if they ever do come, but if they do, then that right person will come in, because my life is set up in a way to where it will accept that, to where it will be prepared to have the right person come in. And that is entirely determined by what you watch, what you expose yourself to, who you hang around, who you connect with. All of that is determined by that, and being very, very careful about that. So at a certain point, you don't really need to focus but so much on the negativity of it, except for maybe to some degree, I try to cover it here and there here on the channel, certain signs and red flags that you should be aware of and educate yourself on. So you're just, when you step into a situation where you end up meeting somebody new, you can immediately identify how much time you're going to spend on this based upon some of the things that they're telling you. You let them kind of reveal who they are, and you just be direct and straightforward, and very quickly you'll figure out the sum of what's going on. So yeah, I'll occasionally try to cover that, but there always has to be, at some point, coming back and being grounded in yourself, and never ever looking at the relationship as something that completes you, but it's something that's extra to who you are and who you're becoming. And I think a lot of the depression part of realizing the truth and having to come out of it, I think a lot of that depression comes from you're mourning the death of other relationships. You're mourning the death of romantic relationships from your past. You're mourning the death of ideas and thoughts that you had from being a child, through growing up as a teenager into adulthood, the dreams that you were hoping for. You're kind of mourning the death of some of that stuff. And in some ways, you end up returning to it. And when I say that, I mean, you might end up realizing maybe you had a passion for music, and you now return to that. You now begin to excel in it. You now begin to, say, learn the guitar and sing. And this is something maybe that you had dreamt about doing when you were younger, and now you've become kind of unfettered from a lot of the crap that was wasting your time, a lot of the stuff where you were worried about other people's opinions of you. And now you can focus on things that are building you up and making you stronger. So it is a real process, and there's no end to it completely, because there will be points where the depression comes back. It just does. There's points in time where you absorb, like I was saying earlier, too much of the negativity, and you have to switch over to something that will build you up a little bit more. Go back to some videos that build you up a bit more, that tell you, well, here's some things that you can do in the meantime that you can actually control. Uh, and for those of you watching, I mean, this is part of my journey too. I'm going through this every day, just the same as you guys are. So that's pretty much it for today. And as always, make sure to like, subscribe. I want all your comments down below. I want to hear your stories, your ideas, and thoughts. I want to hear about your journey through all of this, because it's not only uplifting for everybody else to read it, but I love reading the comments too. I mean, everything from something hilarious to something incredibly meaningful to something that I might be able to cover at some point on the channel. And for those of you that are looking to reach out to me directly, you can reach me at stevejameschannel@gmail.com. And as always, try to refer the channel to a friend if you can. A lot of people that come here actually have been referred by other people, and I've heard from them either via mentions in the comments to directly through email. So we want to welcome everybody that wants to come here and be a part of this journey. And this isn't just red pill. I like to look at it as waking up into sanity. Those of us that are here, we're waking up into sanity, into reason, into honesty and self-reflection, so that we really, really can make changes in our own lives and bring about sort of the best quality life that we can possibly have without feeling trapped by everything that has been going on. So with that said, I'm going to wrap it up here, and I look forward to talking to you all again soon. Have a great night.